everyone, welcome to CresTV, your regular roundup for all things Crestron, AV, and what's going on in the UC industry. And this one's going to be absolutely on, well, not just the UC industry, but just the industry, the world of work in general. I guess modern work and the return to work and how we get on with the new world. I've got not one guest, because that would just be, normal. We've got two guests joining us today. On the middle of your screen, you can see Joe Allen from the University of Utah. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having us here today.
Very good. And on the right hand of your screen, we've got Karin Reed. Karin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Neil. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you.
Fantastic. I'm going to transfer to Joe, and Joe, to tell us a bit about what you do there at the University of Utah, and I'm going to let the barking dog in. Hang on a second. Joe.
Yeah, so I'm a professor at the University of Utah, and I'm the director of the Center for Meeting Effectiveness. In fact, one might call me a meeting scientist. And if you're wondering what that is, it's someone who studies meetings and wants to understand how we make them better from the beginning all the way to the end of the meeting. And so I've been doing that for more than a decade now, and enjoy sharing the insights around how to make our meetings better in all the different modalities and formats that we might find ourselves.
Fantastic. And really interesting. Again, you've got this learning and teaching. Now, we can't see it, but we'll see it when we go full screen. Karin, you're a bit of a writer, and you've written a few books there for Speaker Dynamics. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Speaker Dynamics and what you do.
Absolutely. So actually, three of the books that I've written, of the four have been written with Dr. Allen. So we have focused those books on meeting effectiveness. Suddenly Virtual is about virtual meetings, how to make them more impactful. Suddenly Hybrid is about how to manage what we're calling the modern meeting, because that seems to be the one that we are defaulting to, as the majority of organizations are going hybrid. And then the third one is running effective meetings for dummies. But Speaker Dynamics has been in existence a long time. We teach clients to speak with ease across any platform, which is in person, on camera, or through virtual communication tools. So you can imagine when the pandemic swept across the globe, business became quite overwhelming because we have expertise in video communication. And suddenly we went from training executive leadership teams to training the entire enterprise.
It's interesting. And again, we were talking before I pressed the record button about the different sort of elements of this. And there was one term I've not heard before, which was skillware. I'll start you off on that. Talk us through that and how that kind of fits into the new world of working and again, how people are skilling themselves up.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question, because it really is the foundation of our book, Suddenly Hybrid, Managing the Modern Meeting. In order to make that effective, we suggest that you need the proper hardware, the proper software, and the proper skillware. So the skillware is really the people factor. How are people interacting with the technology to ensure that they can collaborate effectively? And you need to have all three of those that are supporting the process in order to have a hybrid meeting that actually gets business done. And it can be really tricky. It's a challenging environment to work in.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, organizations are really good at distributing the hardware and the software. I mean, we can get that stuff to people pretty easily, right? Thank goodness for the mail service and the internet and so on. We can get that out to them. The problem is we're not teaching them how to use it. And we're also not teaching people how to run an effective meeting in general. And so then they have these tools and they're trying their best, and through trial and error, they land on a kind of, this is an okay kind of meeting, but it's not great. So that's why skillware is so important. That's why skills that people can use to make their meetings effective, both as an attendee and as a leader, are so essential and so neglected.
I love the fact, I've been selling video conferencing for a long time now and working on that. There was always a lovely anecdote, which no one would sit at the chair where the remote control was, because no one wanted to be the one driving the meeting. And, everyone, no one wants to be seen in front of their peers as, not knowing what they're doing. And again, this massive, deployment of kit during, lockdown and kind of return to work and return to office was a big thing. But then again, it's like, how do you go from doing where most people are in the room and you've got maybe one person joining remotely to actually then a much larger mix in the hybrid world of more people working, and how do you engage that remote participant, and how do you then bring them in and bring them into that part of the collaboration in the meeting?
I think it's a joint responsibility of both the meeting leader and the meeting attendees to make those meetings effective. And, so that requires a bunch of different things that you have to consider. So if you think about it from a software and a hardware standpoint, as Joe mentioned, there are a lot of organizations that have been forward thinking and have put that in the hands of their people, but they haven't necessarily told them how to use it effectively. But at a minimum, if you are in a remote situation, you're joining a meeting remotely, you need to ensure that you have a high quality webcam, that you have audio that is high fidelity. You need to have good lighting so people can read your facial expressions. You need to frame yourself so that you appear with as much nonverbal cues as possible on the screen. So it's stuff like that that we focus on from a remote standpoint. And, we've been doing it for a number of years and people kind of have it down at this point to some degree. But then with hybrid, you also have to think about what's going on in the meeting room. And I know at Crestron, you've been, solving that problem for quite some time. And, it is still a matter of then once if you have an effective hybrid setup in place where, everybody can be seen and heard regardless of how they're joining the meeting, you still, for example, as a leader, need to understand how do you engage both audiences, the one that you're sharing the room with physically and the one that's on the other side of the camera lens. How do you make sure that you aren't creating a two-tiered system where those who are in person have greater access to opportunity and information versus those who are remote? It requires policies and that aren't stringent but are understood. And it requires everyone to buy into that in order to ensure that that hybrid team is going to work in a way that they have good team cohesion and there's trust amongst all team members.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about, just having the right tools in the room is one piece. I've got to go and do some plastering at the weekend. Never plastered before. Went out and bought all the plastering tools to go and plaster the wall. So all the tools, all the great, things and buckets and mixers and floats and all the rest of it. But I've got no idea how to use them all. So I've got the best tools in the world, but then I'm going to make a complete hash of it. I'm going to go and watch a bunch of YouTube videos and skill myself up. That's going to be my skillware. But it's interesting, again, this whole meeting piece, that's kind of the similar kind of dynamic. Again, you can have the best cameras in the world, you can have the best audio in the world, but actually it's again, knowing what to do with it and how to use it effectively. I think, Joe, you picked up on that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is you've got two groups of people we're talking about here. We got the people who are leading the meeting leader, and you have the attendees. And the meeting leader could be in person or they could be online, and attendees could be in person or online. That's the hybrid context, right? And both sides of the equation have to be helping each other, right? Too often we lean so heavily on the meeting leader, we assume, well, it's a lousy meeting because that guy does not know how to run a meeting. Well, are you engaging at all? Did you participate? Did you put anything in chat? Did you call out the person that's online who gets ignored and invite them to share something? Don't rely on one person to ensure that the whole meeting, with however many people are there, is going to be good. You have to take some responsibility yourself as an attendee. So that shared responsibility is something that I think is important. It's been important for all meetings, historically speaking, and now. But when you have this complex communication environment where you've got some people connected through video and audio, and some people you see face to face and you're talking through the air, you've got to be more proactive in engaging the best practices that we've been ignoring for a long time, which includes saying, hey, Karin, you have a great idea. Maybe you should share that. Or, hey, Neil, I heard you talking about this yesterday. What do you think about that? And you don't have to wait for the leader to be the one to say that.
Go on, Karin.
Go ahead.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say, some of the best meeting practices that are common sense but commonly ignored, are things like starting and ending on time. And, especially with hybrid, we're seeing kind of an interesting thing that's going on with people's relationships to time. So when we were fully virtual, there might have been like a 5-minute grace period for people to pop onto the screen. But those who have gone back to the office still think about having a little bit of a grace period in order to come into the meeting, but they forgot about the commute time, even if it's the commute from their office to the conference room.
Yes.
So a lot of the meetings are not even like 5 minutes late. They're like 10 minutes late. And those who are attending virtually are like, hey, what gives? I was here at the top of the hour. So there is a lot of conflict that's happening relative to time within a meeting, which Joe has done plenty of research to indicate that really makes people quite angry pretty quickly.
It is interesting because
Absolutely.
when we were all sitting at home, there was no gaps. You were like, off one Zoom
No.
call onto a Teams call, onto a WebEx call, and you literally were. But as you say, you can't do that in the physical office because you've got to go from meeting room 1 to meeting room 3 to then across the campus to then another site. And again, I'm sure Joe,
Mhm.
University of Utah is a reasonably large place with different offices and meeting rooms
Yeah.
all over the place. So
Absolutely. So one of the studies I did recently was focusing on this issue of the back-to-back meeting, right? Which is kind of building on this whole time perspective of starting and ending on time. And the issue is that we have forever in the States and beyond created an environment where we provide time for like our children to transition from their PE class to their math class and so forth. We have a transition time, right? But we don't do that for ourselves in the business world. I'm 3 clicks away from my next meeting, right? And so it's back to back all day long. And so what happens is we have not successfully incorporated humanity into our meeting environment. We can't go to the restroom. We can't get a drink. There's no breaks for lunch. And so I remember sitting, running to the restroom because it was no longer capable of holding it anymore. And during the pandemic, because I was probably 6 hours into a long back-to-back stretch, right?
yeah.
And it's like, this is not right. And that motivated me to study this. And we found that after a good meeting, people need about 5 minutes to recover, right? After a bad meeting, people need about 17 minutes to recover.
Oh,
Right.
serious? Oh, wow. Okay.
And so if our meetings are just kind of, we probably need about 10 minutes. And so the data and the science would advise everyone to make their 30-minute meetings 25 minutes and make their 60-minute meetings 50 minutes and introduce a little
Add in
humanity
that.
into our collaboration. So that way, we can actually find the restroom. We can transition cognitively, neurologically from one topic to the next. And by doing so, we can have a much more productive meeting or set of meetings across the bandwidth of our day, as well as be human.
Right. Karin, to you, if I'm the HR manager or I'm the CEO of a large organization and clearly we've got a problem and need to start looking at this, give us your top 3 kind of tips. Other than first one, obviously get the book and read the book, and you'll find everything you need to do in there. But give us the top 3 highlights of what we can do to start getting the wheels in motion and to make things more effective.
I think being intentional is probably the top thing to do. And that means you need to be intentional in your approach and I'm speaking specifically to hybrid meetings, because those seem to be the ones that are tripping people up at this point. So that means, first of all, gathering a lot of information from those who are stakeholders in these meetings, which means pretty much everybody, and find out what they feel is working and what is not working. And then use that information to develop a list of guidelines so that people can know what the expectations are as an attendee and as a leader. So you're all going in with the same sort of book of rules, so to speak, on how your meetings are going to be conducted. And we actually talk about this a lot in Suddenly Hybrid, and we have like a team meeting agreement template that you can use, which can be really helpful. The other thing is to help your leaders out. So when you are leading a hybrid meeting, there are so many more things that you have to think about, because you have to ensure that you have even participation across all constituencies. And you also have to actually make a decision usually at the end of a meeting. But if you're trying to manage the cognitive load of the technology of the 2 different audiences, sometimes 3 different audiences, like sometimes people call in on the phone, that can be an awful lot. So that is also something to be mindful of. Get your leaders some training, help them to effectively lead through the lens. And then also just be cognizant of the fact that, there might be a need to create new roles around these meetings. So within the meeting, maybe you have somebody who is a technical lead who can handle the situation where one person doesn't have audio, and that could threaten to derail the entire meeting just because that one person does not have audio. Help them have somebody who is like a point person for that particular thing. Consider creating a moderator position, somebody who can come into those meetings and not necessarily be a stakeholder in the decision, the outcome, but who can do the things like, minding the chat, keeping people on time with the timestamps on the agenda, share the cognitive burden amongst a larger group of people in order to ensure that they don't just go into these meetings and find them overly frustrating and then just give up on them entirely, and everybody's suddenly back on, Teams or Zoom or whatever the platform there is.
And Joe, to you, obviously we talked about it from the kind of company point of view. What about me as someone who just joins meetings, and maybe the company isn't doing anything about it, and I feel that there is an issue. What can I do as a meeting participant, to try and make things better, or to get a better experience at the meeting, or to try and again to make things better for other people? What should I be looking at as a participant?
Yeah, I mean, if you have an environment where you feel comfortable, bringing up your thoughts and concerns to your meeting leaders about how they can run the meeting more effectively, or if not, there's also other things. So if you're in an environment where you can, so whether it's the book or other resources, bring up things that would make it better. It's not rocket science; it's meeting science, right? and so having a purpose, right? If you go to a meeting and you still don't understand what the purpose is, and it's not been clarified, it's okay to say, "Hey, what's our main aim today?" Right? Yeah. And to bring those things up. If you're in an environment where you feel like you can do that, right? The other thing to kind of keep in mind is that you as an attendee, there are certain behaviors that you in a good meeting are expected to do, right? You're expected to participate when something comes up that's relevant to you that you have an opinion about. So my advice to for participants is, don't sit along the sidelines. Don't allow yourself to get distracted by the many other things you could be doing at the time, because oftentimes we invite a lot of people to a meeting and half of them don't need to be there, right? So hopefully you're in a meeting you need to be at.
I think Elon Musk did that recently, didn't he? He sent out an email to people saying, if you don't feel you need to be in this meeting, then don't be in it. Don't be in the room if you don't feel you can add anything to that. So yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, it's a really important issue. I think we talk about it in terms of right sizing your meeting. Right. And for that, what we're saying is, once you've decided that what the purpose is, and you've determined that it needs to be a meeting, right, then you have to decide who needs to be there. And too often we may choose to be more inclusive, which is a valuable thing to do. We need to be more inclusive in general, right? But inclusion when it comes to meetings means, I should probably include them because they might need to know what happens at this meeting. Well, if they just might need to know what happens at this meeting, tell them after the meeting what happened at the meeting in a quick little email or an audio message or something to that effect. Is so much quicker, so much easier, and they didn't have to be there for that whole hour, right? So it's deciding who needs to actually be in the meeting and invite them. And then if you're a participant, if you've been invited, and assuming the leader has invited you because it's relevant to you, don't just sit along the sidelines and check your email or watch the latest feed on your stock portfolio. Engage.
Fantastic.
One of the things that you mentioned, Joe, too, that I would just add on is just the concept of, if you have people who are there purely as spectators, do you need them to be there live? Probably not. And one of the great things about these platforms, whether it's a hybrid or virtual meeting, is a lot of times you can record the meeting. So you can send out that video file to the people who may need to know kind of what's going on, but they don't necessarily need to collaborate during that actual session. We have more meetings than ever before. Oftentimes they're longer than ever before. So let's declog the calendar by removing some of those meetings where, that's the case, where you're just spectator and not expected to be active participant.
There's so much more we could cover off on this. I don't want to take anything away from the book, because I want people to go out and read more about that. We've also got a blog post that we've done here at Crestron.com, and I want people to go over to our blog section on the website and have a look at that. But Karin, where can people hook up with you? Where can they get more information? Where can they talk to you? Where do you kind of hang out? Are you a social person on social media, or website? Where do we go to speak to you?
Probably the best place to start is just speakerdynamics.com. That is the website for our company, but it also will link to all of the books that we've written. It'll link to all the social feeds. It also will give you an opportunity to check out something called Speaker Dynamics University, which is our online training platform that helps people to become really effective and confident on-camera communicators. And we're all talking through the camera now, so that's a really important skill set.
That's it. And Joe, where University of Utah, or where can we hook up with you?
Yeah, you can find me on the University of Utah website, but if you want to find my books or the things that I'm working on right now, joeallen.org is where my information is at. And you're welcome to, if you want to talk to me directly, just hit the contact me button, fill out the form, and I will reach back out to you, and we can certainly have a conversation further on this or other topics related to the science of meetings.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for joining us on this episode of CresTV. Really interesting and useful. I need more of it. Just not even my meetings, but just doing these podcasts. And so yes, I will be going and grabbing a copy. And can I get it signed? And
Sure.
And reading through that. But again, thank you for joining us on this episode. Amazing information and a useful resource for all of our viewers out there. And thank you all for joining us and watching this CresTV. Some really interesting information about what's going on and how you can make your meetings and just be more confident in front of the camera. Go out and have a look at the blog post on crestron.com. And also, as I say, go and hook up with Karin and Joe and get more information. Grab the book and empower yourselves to have better, more engaging and more productive meetings in your workplace. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to seeing you on the next CresTV. Ring the bell, hit subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.